The contract was worth $200 million, and the entire board was waiting for one man to fail. What they did not know was that the man they had sent overseas with almost no chance of succeeding was carrying something far more powerful than corporate influence, the determination of a father who had learned that giving up was never an option. When 38-year-old single dad Kellen Voss walked into the largest negotiation room in Singapore, every executive at the table expected him to make a mistake. His own CEO had quietly arranged for him to fail. But before the day was over, Kellen would uncover a hidden problem that could destroy the entire deal, and his decision to save the contract would change not only his career, but the life of the woman who had tried to ruin it. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that a person's character matters more than their position, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us bring more stories about ordinary people who discover extraordinary strength when life gives them every reason to quit. Kellen Voss had never imagined himself sitting inside luxury boardrooms. His life had been built around early mornings, school lunches, unpaid bills, and the small apartment he shared with his 8-year-old daughter, Mira. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away unexpectedly, leaving Kellen to raise their daughter alone. He had become both parents at once, learning how to braid hair, pack lunches, check homework, and work long hours without allowing Mira to see how exhausted he was. His career at North Star Meridian, an international engineering company, had been modest but steady. Kellen was not the loudest executive or the most polished speaker. What made him valuable was his ability to notice details everyone else overlooked. He could read a contract the way some people read a newspaper. He could spot a missing number, a strange clause, or a small inconsistency buried inside hundreds of pages. His colleagues trusted him because he never took shortcuts, especially when money and people's livelihoods were involved. That was precisely why CEO Serafina Vale wanted him gone. Serafina was 41, brilliant, disciplined, and known throughout the corporate world for turning struggling companies into profitable giants. She had built North Star Meridian's international division almost single-handedly, and nobody questioned her authority. But behind her controlled expression was a woman terrified of losing control. She had recently promised investors that North Star would secure a $200 million infrastructure contract with Pacific Crown Development, one of Asia's most influential construction groups. The final negotiations were scheduled overseas, and Serafina needed someone to represent North Star. Officially, she chose Kellen because he was the company's best contract analyst. Unofficially, she chose him because she believed he was too inexperienced to survive the negotiation alone. The plan was simple. Kellen would be sent to Singapore with an outdated presentation, incomplete financial projections, and only 24 hours' notice. His senior negotiation team would remain behind, supposedly because of scheduling problems. Serafina knew the overseas executives were impatient, demanding, and ruthless. She expected Kellen to stumble. If the deal collapsed, she could blame his lack of leadership, remove him from the international division, and install one of her closest allies in his place. To everyone else, it would look like a professional failure. To Serafina, it would be an elegant solution. Kellen discovered something was wrong the moment he opened the briefing documents on the plane. Several numbers did not match the financial spreadsheets he had previously reviewed. A delivery timeline had been changed. One liability clause had disappeared completely. He could have called Serafina and complained, but he knew what would happen. He would be told to trust the documents and focus on the presentation. Instead, Kellen spent the entire flight rebuilding the contract from the original files stored on his encrypted tablet. He barely slept. When the plane landed during the bright Singapore morning, the city was already alive with movement, glass towers reflecting the clear daylight, traffic flowing beneath elevated roads, and workers rushing toward another busy day. Kellen checked into the hotel, placed a photograph of Mira beside the lamp, and looked at the handwritten note she had slipped into his suitcase. It simply reminded him to come home safely and not forget that he was the best dad in the world. He smiled, even though his chest felt heavy. He knew he had been sent there to fail. But he also knew exactly what he had promised his daughter. He had promised that no matter how difficult life became, he would keep trying. The negotiation began at 9 the next morning. Around the enormous glass table sat Pacific Crown executives, legal advisors, financial specialists, and technical consultants. Across from them stood Kellen alone. The atmosphere was cold and professional. Serafina joined through a video connection from Northstar's headquarters, watching silently. For the first hour, everything went according to the plan she had expected. The Pacific Crown team questioned Northstar's projections, challenged its delivery schedule, and demanded compensation protections that could cost millions. Kellen remained calm, answering every question carefully. Then the lead executive placed a revised contract on the table and announced that Pacific Crown would terminate the negotiation unless Northstar accepted the new conditions that afternoon. Kellen felt something was wrong. He studied the document and noticed a small reference buried inside a technical appendix. The clause appeared harmless, but it connected the project's financing to a third-party supplier. Kellen recognized the supplier's name from a financial investigation he had read months earlier. The company was under severe regulatory pressure and had recently hidden major debt through a chain of overseas subsidiaries. If Northstar signed the contract as presented, Pacific Crown could legally transfer a portion of that financial risk to Northstar. The company could lose far more than $200 million. Kellen understood immediately. Someone had deliberately removed the warning from his original documents. He could have remained silent. He could have allowed the contract to collapse and returned home with proof that Serafina had sabotaged him. But Kellen remembered the hundreds of workers whose jobs depended on Northstar, the investors whose savings were tied to the company, and the engineers who had spent years developing the project. Most importantly, he thought about Mira. He wanted his daughter to grow up believing that doing the right thing still mattered when nobody was watching. So Kellen did something nobody expected. Instead of attacking Pacific Crown or accusing anyone of deception, he asked for a short recess. During that break, he contacted an independent financial auditor and verified the supplier's liabilities. Then he returned to the table and calmly explained the problem. The room fell silent. Pacific Crown's executives were stunned. They had not known about the hidden exposure either. Their own legal team had missed it. Kellen proposed a revised structure that protected both companies. Instead of abandoning the supplier, he suggested replacing the risky financing arrangement with a transparent escrow system, adding independent audits, and restructuring the payment schedule so neither side carried unacceptable exposure. It was complicated, but it worked. For the next 6 hours, Kellen negotiated line by line, refusing to rush and refusing to sacrifice the company's future just to make the deal look successful. Back at headquarters, Serafina watched the negotiation unfold in disbelief. Her plan had failed. But something else had happened that she never expected. Kellen had not only protected Northstar, he had protected Pacific Crown from a financial disaster that could have damaged its reputation for years. By late afternoon, the two companies reached an agreement. The final contract remained worth nearly $200 million, but its terms were safer, stronger, and more sustainable than the original proposal. When Kellen returned home several days later, he expected to be fired. Instead, he walked into a conference room filled with senior executives. Serafina stood at the front, expression unreadable. Kellen placed his travel bag down and waited. Then she admitted what she had done. She confessed that she had deliberately sent him overseas without the resources he needed because she wanted him to fail. She admitted that she had believed he was too ordinary, too distracted by fatherhood, and too inexperienced to represent a company at that level. But she also admitted that she had been wrong. Kellen did not celebrate her downfall. He did not demand revenge. He simply told her that what she had done could never be repeated, because people should never be sacrificed to protect someone's position. For the first time in years, Serafina lowered her defenses. She explained that she had spent her entire life believing weakness was dangerous. She had built walls around herself because she was terrified that trusting someone would eventually cost her everything. Kellen's response was not anger. He told her that strength was not about making sure nobody could hurt you. Sometimes strength meant giving another person the opportunity to prove they could be trusted. Weeks later, Kellen was promoted to Director of International Contracts. But the biggest change happened outside the office. Serafina began rebuilding the company culture she had damaged. She created stronger ethical safeguards, transparent reporting procedures, and a program that gave working parents more flexibility instead of treating family responsibilities as weaknesses. One afternoon, Kellen arrived at Myra's school to pick her up. She ran toward him with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Kellen knelt down and hugged her tightly. She asked whether his overseas trip had gone well. He smiled and told her that it had been difficult, but sometimes difficult things turned into important lessons. Myra looked at him proudly and said she knew he would figure it out. Those words meant more to Kellen than the promotion, the contract, or the millions of dollars he had helped protect. Because the truth was, he had never been fighting for a title. He had been fighting to become the kind of father his daughter could believe in. And somewhere inside North Star Meridian, Serafina finally understood something she had forgotten long ago: a person's greatest value is not measured by the size of their office, the power of their title, or the amount of money they control. Sometimes the most valuable person in the room is the one who refuses to abandon his principles when everyone else expects him to fail. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness and integrity still matter, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps these stories reach people who may be facing their own impossible moment. And before we end, here is a special request: comment, "I choose integrity," below if you believe doing the right thing is still worth it, even when nobody is watching. Because sometimes life will place you in a room where everyone expects you to fail. Sometimes the people who should support you will doubt you. Sometimes the odds will seem completely unfair. But never forget what Kellen learned that day: you do not need to control the room to change the outcome. You only need the courage to stand for what is right. And when you do, even the door that was designed to close on you can become the doorway to something greater.